here with us on Fourth and Forever once again. I'm your host, Lucas Hill. We'll also have our audio format as we usually do. You can check it out on Spotify and wherever you get your podcast. Miles Edwards alongside with me. As always, bro, we got a lot to talk about. And I think the biggest story right now, we got the WNBA draft going on right now. It is official. The Indiana Fever are going to make none other than arguably the biggest star in all of women's basketball and maybe just all in college basketball in general, and Caitlin Clark. She is the new number one overall pick. So Indiana kind of getting there. Hopefully somebody that can not only elevate the women's game, but we'll just see how it goes from then on. Also looking to add a 14th team by 2026. We got some more about that later on in the show. We also got to talk some UFL action. Got to talk of some NFL free agency. Got some NBA playoff action. And we'll also break down the national championships that happened last week. But first of all, Miles, you had a lot to talk about. And we talked before the show started about that you had a big thing to talk about. You talked about the Pelicans, and obviously you talked about the Milwaukee Bucks and kind of the lack of success that the Bucks had this season and that the Pels had. So go ahead, the floor is yours. It's time for an Edwards rant.
Well, let me start with the Bucks right here. Let me start with the Bucks. And this just makes the Bucks organization look so bad. So bad. Let's go back to last year. The Milwaukee Bucks are the number 1 seed. They were the favorites to go to the NBA Finals. You had Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, all the core guys. But you had Mike Budenholzer as a head coach, at the head coach, won an NBA title back in 2021. And you were the number 1 seed last year. You played the Miami Heat, and you get bounced in the first round in 5 games with your best player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, injured. I believe he missed 2 games, game 2 and game 3, got hurt in game 1. But he played game 4 and game 5. But obviously, you could tell he wasn't 100%, even though he still did Giannis things. But you fired Mike Budenholzer for some reason after being the number 1 seed, and the only reason why you were bounced out in the first round because your best player was hurt. I think that's a slap in the face of Mike Budenholzer, especially that he won you a title not too long ago. So then what do? You hire Adrian Griffin, who obviously you can tell he wasn't ready. But in January, remember, Lucas, a lot of people forget they were neck and neck with Boston for the number 1 seed with Adrian Griffin. I believe they were 34-13. And you fire him mid-season for some reason. I guess he wasn't the right fit, or for whatever reason, it just didn't work out, I guess. So you fire Adrian Griffin, and then you replace him with Doc Rivers, and we all know his track record. Yes, he has the 1 championship back in 08 with Boston, but what has he done since? What has Doc Rivers done since? Let's think about it. In 2010, I believe they had a 3-2 lead on the Lakers in the finals. And you lose that championship series to Kobe Bryant and Pau Gasol, Phil Jackson, and company. 2 years later, you're up 3-2 again against LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and the Miami Heat. And you lose that series. Then you go to the Clippers. You had Lob City, and Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, JJ Redick, to name a few. And you were just up 3-2. You were up 3-1 in 2015 against the Houston Rockets, who had James Harden. Everyone likes to call him a playoff choker. And you lose 3-1. You choke a 3-1 lead to the Rockets in 2015. And then things don't work out there. Oh, by the way, also he choked another 3-1 lead with the Clippers in the bubble to the Nuggets when you had Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and, at the helm. Then you get fired from the Clippers. You go to the 76ers. And last season you're up 3-2 again to the Celtics. And you managed to choke game 6 at home. And then you get blown out the arena in game 7, let Jason Tatum score 51. And now you're in Milwaukee. Once again, you're kind of in this same cycle, but think about it, Lucas. He has coached Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer after Hall of Famer, and you can't get it done. This man hasn't made it past the second round since 2012. So I'm putting the pressure on Doc Rivers. Because here's the thing. I think Indiana beats Milwaukee in that first round series, especially with Adrian Griffin. The Pacers won the season series 3-1 before Doc Rivers even came to town. And in my opinion, and probably in everyone else's eyes, they were a better team with Adrian Griffin. So here's my thing. Doc Rivers, if you don't make it to the conference finals this year, which I don't think you are, but if you don't make it to the conference finals this year, this is your last coaching job in the NBA. This is it. This is it for Doc Rivers, especially the offseason Milwaukee had. They got Damian Lillard. I believe they got Jay Crowder. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But, for sure, you made some headlines in the offseason. You fire Adrian Griffin, and now you get Doc Rivers, who isn't really too much better than Adrian Griffin. So I'm putting the pressure on the Milwaukee Bucks. If you don't make it to the conference finals, Doc Rivers is fired, and he's probably never getting a coaching job ever again. So get it together, Milwaukee. Lock in, because this is going to look bad if you don't make it to the conference finals. The Pelicans.
17, let me add something on the Bucks real fast, Miles. 17-19 with Doc Rivers as your head coach. You've already mentioned about the fact that they've screwed away every single opportunity that they've had to be the best team in basketball right now. Because there's no doubt in my mind that if you go into postseason play, there's no doubt that I think that Milwaukee can come in and really show out. And last year kind of reminded me of when Derrick Rose got hurt in the first round against Philadelphia. Without Derrick Rose at the helm, what happens? A team collapses. Let's be honest, this was a Milwaukee team that was 24-8 going into the month of January. You have a bad stretch where you lose 4 out of 5, and then you fire a guy that was 30-13 as your head coach. This is so much more than just the head coach not being ready. This is the up to management. Yes, John Horst has done great things since he came in 2017. Led the team into a 60-22 record in 2019. Makes some great moves. Got a guy like Drew Holiday. Got Chris Middleton to sign an extension. Got Giannis to stay in Milwaukee. But here's the problem, though. When you have general managers that have no balls whatsoever, this was a joke since last summer. When you fire Mike Budenholzer for what? A first-round playoff exit? And a guy that won you a title in 21? I get you lost in the conference semis. Oh, you guys got scared. You got scared because you thought it was going to be just like when he was in Atlanta. Because here's Budenholzer's track record. When he was in Atlanta, here was a team that went from a first-round conference finals in 2014 and 15 as the best team in the Eastern Conference with a team. And let me tell you about what that Atlanta team had, too. Here was a team that had Al Horford, Paul Millsap, Jeff Teague, Dennis Schrader was a young guy, and you also had Kyle Korver coming off the bench. That was a fantastic Hawks team. They get swept by Cleveland in the finals. They lose in the conference semis. They lost in the first round. They lose and they missed the playoffs 3 years later. I think they looked at this and said, this is a disaster that's about to happen. They looked at the shortened season that Milwaukee had in 20 through 21, and they saw that. They thought there's no way that this team can compete at a high level for 82 games. Well, last year they win 58 games. Yes, you missed out on Giannis Antetokounmpo. None of this is Mike Budenholzer's fault, okay? He was just a product of bad general management. It happened in Atlanta and it's happening in Milwaukee. This is what's going on right now because Budenholzer went through some garbage during last year. He lost his brother in a car crash during the series. You lose Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you're going to put this dude at his lowest? This Bucks front office has been a joke. There's a reason why they have not won more titles other than the one they won in 2021. There's a reason why they didn't win it in 2019 when they lost in the first round, or they lost in the conference finals to Toronto.
Toronto, yeah.
There's a reason why they lost in the first round last year to Miami. That was a team that I think could have very well made a 7-game series with Denver in last year's NBA Finals. Because Budenholzer has been here for a long time, worked under Pop, got his opportunity with Atlanta, and took advantage of it. He did the same thing in Milwaukee. And the fact that he doesn't have another coaching job is unbelievable. So, bottom line, management has screwed the Milwaukee Bucks for the last 5 years, and it's gotten from them having to fight to win a title to keep Giannis in Milwaukee to now, all likelihood, Giannis is going to have to stay because he's getting to the end of his career. He's 30 already. He'll be 30 in December. We'll just have to see how he plays throughout the rest of his career.
I still think Giannis still has a lot left in the tank given his age. But like you said, this Bucks front office has been awful. And they have put a lot of pressure on Doc Rivers because of what they've done with their last 2 coaches. You know, I don't see how you can replace, because I believe Mike Budenholzer was a former coach of the year too, in Atlanta and in Milwaukee.
Yep.
So it's not like he's a bad coach. You thought in that moment that when you lost in the first round to Miami, you thought that this was going to be the end of Milwaukee's little run with Giannis.
Right.
But then you fire Mike Budenholzer, and then you go and get Damian Lillard, and now you think, okay, we're going to do better because we have better players, and we have a guy who can shoot. We have, you know, we could put a lot of pressure off of Giannis, and now, you know, you have another guy who can get you 30 as well. Obviously, Chris Middleton has his moments scoring 30. Bobby Portis has his moments. Brook Lopez, you know, they have a great supporting cast. So let's not sit here and act like Milwaukee's not a good team, which is why the pressure's on Doc Rivers, because they're putting you as the main guy to bring this team where they were back in 2021, because you didn't think Mike Budenholzer was going to do it again. So, and like I said, I don't think they're going to win this first round series with Indiana. I think Indiana has their number. Tyrese Halliburton is a bad man. Let me tell you about this. Don't sleep on Indiana. I believe they have the best offense in the league. They lead the league in points per game with 122 points. Their defense is lackluster at times, but when they get going, they're no joke. And they proved it in the regular season. Remember, they beat Milwaukee in the in-season tournament. So if I'm Milwaukee, No playing around. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. Doc Rivers, you better get to the conference finals. Otherwise, you'll never have a job again. That's my thing. Now the Pelicans. The Pelicans now obviously a lot of people don't really expect the Pelicans to make a deep run in the playoffs. I'm not expecting them to make a deep run in the playoffs. They won 49 games as a 7 seed. I know how stacked the Western Conference is. But what improvements has New Orleans made? As stacked as the Western Conference is, look at a team like Oklahoma City, who was the 10th seed last year. The 10th seed last year, and they beat the Pelicans in the play-in. Obviously, they lost to Minnesota in the 8th seed game, but look where they at now. They're the number 1 seed in the West. Minnesota, as I mentioned, Minnesota was a play-in team last year. They're the 3 seed this year. So as stacked as the Western Conference, at least there's some teams in the West who made improvements. Hey, you can even say Dallas. Dallas was the 11th seed last year. They didn't even make the play-in last year. Yes, I know they tanked to get draft picks, but they still missed the playoffs, and now they're back in. But the Pelicans, this is your 3rd year in the play-in, 3rd straight year in the play-in. You made it out in 22. You beat the Spurs, and then you beat the Clippers to get in the playoffs in 22. Last year, like I said, you lost to OKC in the first play-in game. Now you're a 7th seed, which means if you somehow, some way lose to the Lakers, you have another home game against either the Warriors or the Kings. And if you lose that game, if you lose 2 home games in the play-in, we have to talk about Willie Green on the hot seat. Have to. There's no excuses now. Because at first, the previous years, I put the blame on Zion a little bit for, missing games, but you've had Zion for the majority of the season this year. And I know Brandon Ingram missed most of the season down the stretch, but this is a really good team. This is a very talented team. They have talented players. Do I think they can make it out the play-in? Absolutely, which is why I'm putting the pressure on the Pelicans to make it out the play-in and get either the 7th or the 8th. Because if you don't, this is your 3rd straight year in the play-in, and this could very well be your 2nd straight year losing in the play-in. And I don't know what the excuse is now this year for the Pelicans. So, now, like I said, I'm not really expecting too much from New Orleans. I do see them losing in the first round to either Denver or Oklahoma City. Regardless of how many games they play, I still think they're losing in the first round, but at least make it out the play-in, because that's probably the only improvement you're going to make this year.
The Pels, in my opinion, the biggest problem with them is staying healthy. And sometimes dudes just do not want to play. I looked at Zion and I look at Jonas Valanciunas. I think those are 2 of the best bigs in the game. Everybody talks about how Jonas Valanciunas is falling off and that he was a role player and all this. He's still playing at a high level and played 82 games this year. All 82. That's very rare that you see that now in the NBA. You're not seeing guys play that much. Zion played over 70 games for the first time in his career and didn't do bad. 22-5-1. Or 22-5-5. Not too terrible. The problem is that down the stretch, when you miss out on guys like Brandon Ingram, especially in the months of late February to April, when you miss guys like CJ McCollum, Brandon Ingram, and obviously Zion, that's a problem. You can't allow that. And they got off to a fantastic start after the All-Star break. You end up going, I know it was kind of a slow start. You started off losing 3 of your first 5, and then you end up going into the month of March. You go 10-4 throughout the month. You were 45-29, and I think you were in the position to get a 4 seed. And then you lose 3 straight. You end up winning 4 more. You beat Phoenix. Now you have to beat LA just to win the division. If you win the division, you're out of the play-in. You can't even get past LA. The problem with that, Willie Green chose to play small ball. Problem is, when you have 2 of the most dominant players in the NBA in LeBron James and Anthony Davis, well, you can't necessarily play small ball and go up and down the court with them. You can't do that. You can't do that against guys like Cam Reddish, Austin Reeves, and of course Jackson Hayes when he has his moments, even Rui Hachimura whenever he gets his opportunities. So I agree with you, Miles. I looked at the last 2 years. I looked at 21. I thought, okay, this is a team that has a chance to really get up and has an opportunity to excel into what could be a contender in the West for years to come if they stay healthy. The biggest news is they can't stay healthy. Coaching wise, they can't coach down the stretch. They decided to do late game adjustments and screw themselves. They turned the ball over way too much. I saw it quite a few times this season where the biggest thing when you can't win at home, you're 28-14 on the road. You're 21-19 at home. How does that make sense? I have no clue. But you had all the opportunity in the world. If you win the division, you get the 5 seed. You can't even get that. So you've really just screwed yourself. And next year is make or break for the Pelicans. Everybody says that, oh, well, they're just still young. Okay, when you're young, we've been saying this for the last, year or 2, that they're young. We can't have this excuse anymore, Miles. We can't. There's no way we can have this. They've been in this system for a while. They've got supposedly having leaders around them. And you're supposed to have 4 big-time guys with Jonas, with CJ McCollum, with Brandon Ingram, and with Zion Williamson. And we haven't seen them do anything whatsoever. So next year is make or break for you. You better make a splash in free agency because this is going to be a big one. You better give Matt Ryan some more minutes. He's a good one. You better get rid of Larry Nance. He can't defend the rim whatsoever. Even for Zion, this is make or break for him down the stretch. Let's just be honest.
Like I said, we can make all the excuses we want about the Pelicans. Oh, they're young. They can't stay healthy. I get the healthy argument, but there's a lot of young teams who've done a lot better job than the Pelicans. I just mentioned.
Let me ask you this: how many guys are actually unhealthy? Let's talk about Joel Embiid for a minute. He doesn't want to go to a game because why? Because there's snow in his driveway.
That was I thought that was DeAndre Ayton who said that.
Was it DeAndre Ayton?
I think so, yeah.
It was either Joel Embiid missed a game because of something stupid too, but I think DeAndre Ayton did the same thing. I'm not sure though.
But we can make up the youth excuse all we want, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of young teams who've been doing a much better job than the Pelicans. I just mentioned Oklahoma City. I believe they're the youngest team in the NBA, and they're the number 1 seed in the West. Minnesota's pretty young. They have a young superstar in Anthony Edwards, who I think is going to be a superstar.
Anthony Edwards, face of the league,
an even bigger superstar than he is now in the future. I think he's going to be the face of the league in the next 5 years. The way he's been playing, I mean, he's been doing some unbelievable things. The poster he had on John Collins was absolutely nasty. But there's a lot of young teams who've shown out this year. I mean, hey, we can even go to the East and say Orlando. And, you know, a lot of people like to talk about, oh, well, the East isn't really all that this year. The 2 seed is like 16 games behind the Celtics, who are, I believe the Knicks are the 2 seed. They're like what 16 games behind the 1 seed, like
14.
14. I understand how stacked the West is. The West has been unbelievable. We already knew that before the season even started. We knew the teams coming in, even the teams that didn't make the playoffs. I mean, you got Wemby, you got the Grizzlies, John Morant. Obviously the Grizzlies had some injuries, but like I said, I don't want to hear no excuses for the Pelicans. Mm-mm. Right now, the Pelicans are a mediocre basketball team based off of what they've done the past 3 years. You know, if we don't make it to the playoffs as a 7 seed, who I believe a 7 seed since the play-in era, I don't think a 7 seed's ever missed the playoffs. And for good reason. You have 2 home games guaranteed. Like, you know, I think, obviously they got blown out by the Lakers yesterday. They have another chance against the Lakers tomorrow. Um, Regardless of where they finish, they should be in the playoffs. And now you have all your guys healthy for the most part. There's no excuse of missing the playoffs if you're the Pelicans. And, you know, I wouldn't say maybe we could give him a pass. Maybe we could give Willie Green a pass this year. He on the hot seat going into next year. Next year's make or break. But I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. Listen. I've been so high on the Pelicans. I've always been wondering, when is the year we're gonna break? When is the year going to be the year that they break out? And obviously, it's not this year. And I just can't I just can't see the Pelicans keeping Willie Green. Obviously I can see it, but I just don't think it makes sense for him to be the head coach when, last year you lost in the play-in. This year, if you don't make it in play-in, it just, to me, I don't know. I don't know, but obviously we'll see. But for me, I don't really think the Pelicans are going to miss the playoffs. They really shouldn't miss the playoffs. But obviously, we're in the NBA, Western Conference, very, very competitive. We'll just have to see what happens this week in the in-season tournament, in the play-in tournament.
Let me tell you an NBA team that you need to look out for. Everybody talks about the Celtics and how they're good. Like, I get it. You better watch out for the New York Knicks. And Stephen A. Smith is about to get on his high horse. When I talk about Jalen Brunson, last 5 games he's been averaging 39 a game. 39. And they're not playing no cupcake teams, all right? These dudes are literally, they're grinding. This team was 19-15 at one point. They go on a 14-2 run in January. They've been dominating since then. They played Milwaukee at Milwaukee. They've gone to Chicago. He put up 39 against Boston. He put up 30 against Brooklyn, and he put up 40 in an overtime win last night against Chicago. When I'm telling you, this is a legitimate good team. I'm telling you. There's no doubt about it. No question in my mind that I think that this team can really compete with the Celtics. The thing about it is, you got to have depth, and that's something that the Knicks have struggled with. Well, they've got it this year. They've got Dante DiVincenzo, who's been an absolute defensive machine. He's taken advantage of his time. You got Julius Randle, who, if he's healthy, he's arguably the best forward in the game. Josh Hart, excellent coming off the bench sometimes. RJ Barrett, hurt. When he's healthy, he's one of the best guards in the game. OG Anunoby, when he's healthy, he's one of the best players in the game. you got to get these guys healthy. You got to get them in a game. You got to get them in an opportunity. Because when you give them a shot and when you get them in the watch the first round in a couple days. Watch who they play. It's going to be a sweep. I can tell you that right now. But I'm telling you, this is a team that can really make a run. When everybody's healthy, this is arguably one of the best teams in all of the NBA. And that's hard for me to say, knowing the Knicks' history. But it's amazing to me how we've gone from the Knicks being the doormat of the Eastern Conference to all of a sudden, this team is now knocking on the door as the number 2 seed in the East.
Here's here's what I got to say about the Knicks. Dante DiVincenzo has not been talked about enough. This was a money free agent pick for the Knicks in the offseason. This was big time, and no one's talked about it. We talk about Jalen Brunson. We talk about Julius Randle. Before R.J. Barrett and OG Anunoby got traded to Toronto, they were big time pieces. But here's my thing about the Knicks. I'm very, very skeptical about the Knicks. It's about who they play in the first round. And it's all about this playing game between the Heat and the Sixers. If they play Philly, I'm taking New York in that series. I think they have more depth than Philly. And quite frankly, I just think they're a better team. I got the Knicks in 6 against Philly. But let me tell you something. Do not sleep on the Miami Heat. They've been here before.
Hey,
If
we're
they
gonna run it
play
back.
if they play Miami and Jalen Brunson and the company got to see playoff Jimmy, I got to take Miami in that series, man. It's listen. I love the Knicks. I love the Knicks. They've had a great season. They've had a great off season. They've had some great trades, and we talk about how bad the Bucks front office is. The Knicks front office has been outstanding from the past 2 from last season. Getting Jalen Brunson, getting Julius Randle. I mean,
Hey,
the Knicks got it going.
remember that summer? I think it was the summer of 20. That was the year when Braun was a free agent or something like that. It was either 20 or it was 19. That was the summer. I remember Stephen A going absolutely insane.
That was
They said, "You're getting Julius Randle instead of Braun." Da 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 da. Just going.
yeah.
Oh, where are they
That was
at?
yeah. That was when KD and Kyrie went to Brooklyn instead of uh New York, the Knicks. They went to
And
the
everybody
Nets
was calling them
19.
the next great dynasty. They called the Lakers the next great dynasty. Where are they at now? Lakers got a title because of the bubble. Let's just be straight up.
But man, I just can't bet against playoff Jimmy when it's they're just a different team in the playoffs. When you look at the Miami Heat and you look at Eric Spoelstra, you look at Pat Riley and the job they have done together in Miami, that's a dangerous team. When they're more dangerous when their backs against the wall, when everyone's counted them out. That's when they're most dangerous. Remember last year when they almost blew a 3-0 lead to Boston, everyone counted them out in game 7. What happened? They go into Boston and they run them right out the arena. They say, hey, hey, y'all had us, right where y'all wanted us, and they couldn't finish the job. Yes, I know Jason Tatum tweaked his ankle a little bit in that game, but man, the Miami Heat, because we also talked about Milwaukee when they lost to Miami last year. Jimmy Butler still dropped 40 in game 4 and game 5. Remember, they were down 15 in game 4 and game 5. They forced overtime in game 5 to Milwaukee. I believe Jimmy Butler had like a putback and they sent it to overtime and they finished the game in overtime. They beat New York the next year. They go to Boston. They play Denver in the finals, who obviously everyone knew Denver was the better team, but they still got them one in Denver in game two. This is probably, I wouldn't say most slept on team because I'm pretty sure everyone knows what the Heat is about around this time. Here's the thing with the Heat though. I do have a lot of faith in Miami because realistically, I do like the Knicks, but I really don't see anyone competing with Boston in a 7 game series than the Miami Heat. Basically because, they're the reigning Eastern Conference champions. But this year, I think Boston's a lock for the finals. So the only way I don't see Miami making a deep playoff run is if they lose to Philly in this playing game. Because if Philly wins, they'll play the 2 seed or the Knicks, and now Miami has to play the winner of Chicago and Atlanta. I don't think any of those teams are making the playoffs, so I think Philly and Miami are going to get those last 2 spots. But I I don't see a team other than Miami really who can compete with Boston in a 7 game series. So that's why I'm a bit skeptical with the Knicks. It just depends on who they play, but you are right about the Knicks. They are no joke. They are no joke. They can space the floor. They have great depth. They have a superstar in Jalen Brunson. They have a great they have a great supporting cast with Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, Julius Randle when healthy. Bogdanovich has for sure hit his stride at the right time in playoff time. But you know, if we're talking about the East, other than Boston, I think Miami is the team to talk about.
Final thoughts. Got some more NBA coming your way. First round, the play-in starts tonight, I believe, with the Lakers and
Tomorrow,
Pels.
I think it's tomorrow.
It's either today. Okay, thank you. It's either today or tomorrow. Final thoughts, Miles. Who you got for NBA Finals? I already know my pick.
NBA Finals. Well, like I said in the East, give me Boston. I think Boston represents the Eastern Conference in the finals. Um, but the West, this is where it gets tricky. And, you know, it's easy to say Denver again, representing the West. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and take Denver. I'm gonna go ahead and take Denver. I think it's gonna be the Nuggets and the Celtics, but you need to watch out for Dallas. You need to watch out for Dallas. I think Dallas can make a finals run. I think the Clippers can make a finals run. But for safe bet, give me the Nuggets and the Celtics in the finals this year.
The safe bet is obviously, like you mentioned, the Nuggets. Boston, I know for sure, is making the finals this year. There's no doubt about it. I think they're the best team in the NBA right now. But you know what? Give me Minnesota playing Boston for this one. I do like the T Wolves. I like this young group. They have a good mix with them. They have exactly what you want. You've got a guy like Mike Conley. Despite his age, is still playing at a high level. You got Rudy Gobert, who's arguably one of the best centers in the league. You also have Naz Reid, who's starting to become a young rising star. You got Karl Anthony Towns. We already know about him. Not a whole lot needs to be said about him. We already talked about Anthony Edwards. This dude's about to get paid pretty soon. And I think that this is the best opportunity for the T Wolves to really take advantage and get his opportunity to be the future face of the league with a team that he knows he can win with. And Minnesota is it. Minnesota has done such a great job this year. I'm going ahead and just saying that what Chris Fitch has done since he came here in 21, going from here's a guy that was in the D League as a longtime coach in the D League, from 97 to 2011. Gets his opportunity with Houston. Gets to be the associate head coach for 4 years with the Nuggets and the Pels. Goes to be an assistant with Nick Nurse in Toronto. And now he gets his opportunity in Minnesota. Should have been coach of the year in 2021. Coached a team that was a 16-win team during the bubble. Missed the postseason. They end up missing the first round the last 2 years, losing the first round. That streak ends. I think that this is a team that's going to be making a finals run very soon. I'm telling you, if it's not this year, it's next year. But for me,
I agree.
I'm going with Minnesota this year. I do believe that they're going to become one of the best teams in the NBA for years to come. I'm not saying dynasty, but anything can happen at the same time.
You ain't wrong. I like Minnesota. Not a bad pick.
Moving on from the NBA side of things, let's go to the NFL and talk. Arguably the biggest story right now is Rashee Rice and the situation that he's in. He ended up turning himself in last Thursday, got released on bond. These are very serious charges that he's dealing with. It includes aggravated assault and a collision that involves serious bodily injury. 23 years old. He had 5 days ago, the arrest warrant came out, and remember a couple weeks ago, he got involved in a hit and run out in Dallas with a Corvette and a Lamborghini. There was also 4 other vehicles that were involved. He ends up leaving the scene, and then afterwards ends up finding that, oh, there's marijuana in the Lamborghini. Starts off as a misdemeanor. Well, when they find the video about him running from the scene, bad news. He's released right now, but you're 23 years old. You've just thrown arguably your career away. I don't know what the NFL is going to do to him. If he's being sued right now for over $1 million in damages, 10 million in punitive damages by 2 people that say they were injured in the 6 vehicle crash a couple weeks ago. This is unbelievable. These kids are 23 and 21 years old. I can tell right now. The other guy, his name is Teddy Knox. He doesn't have any money. I can tell you that. He ain't got that much. Okay. This is crazy. This is what is wrong in today's society. You're going to act like an idiot on the road. You're a young guy. You know everybody is looking at you. You have the world in front of you. And you're going to blow it. This was a young guy that I was excited to see this upcoming year. And now his career is probably down the toilet because of this. He's lucky he didn't kill anybody, too. Because if he'd have killed somebody, his career is just about over, just like Henry Ruggs' career was. If he killed, I'm telling you, I don't know what the NFL is going to do to him. Are they going to suspend him for the entire year? You got to kind of make an example. But at the same time, we've seen sexual assault cases like Kareem Hunt's end up being only a half of a year suspension. But we see gambling consequences end up going over the full year, which doesn't make sense with Calvin Ridley's case. 119 miles an hour. You're stupid. This is also a part of the ESPN report. They're asking for actual damages that include medical care, physical pain, suffering, loss of earning capacity, mental anguish, and property damage of $71,122.69. Rice said in an Instagram post that he took full responsibility for his actions. And Coach Reed said that he expects him to participate with the offseason program Monday in their virtual meetings. He wouldn't say that if they were going to have him on in the spring when they moved the program over to Kansas City. This is ridiculous, dude. I mean, 2 young kids and they're going to throw their life away because they want to be reckless. when you know the world is looking at you, especially Rashee Rice right now. This is just sad.
This was a young player who showed out this year. He picked up a lot of people's slack on the Kansas City Chiefs. Kadarius Toney, yeah, especially in the postseason. We talked about Kadarius Toney and his drops. We talked about how Travis
Everybody
Kelce.
thought Kadarius Toney was going to be the guy going into this past
Yeah,
season.
they did. They did. He was
What
supposed to
he
be
did
the
with the
guy.
Super Bowl. But the problem is when you get him on the offensive side of the ball, he does nothing. He did it. He showed it in when he was with the Giants. Leave him on special teams. Don't bother putting him with this Kansas City offense because he screwed the living life out of this KC team. Because arguably, this is a team that to me could have won 14, 15 games depending on 2 or 3 plays that ended up screwing them at the end of the day. 2 of which were because of Kadarius Toney. You had the multiple drops in week 1, and then you have when he's offsides against Buffalo.
And that's just name one. You want to talk about drops? How about Valdez-Scantling and his drop against Philadelphia for the game? We talked about Travis Kelce having one of his worst stretch of games of his career down the stretch. You know who picked up all that slack? Rashee Rice. He stepped up. He stepped up when no one else could step up. In the playoffs, he was excellent in the playoffs. You talk about his catch rating, 78%, pretty good. The guy had 938 yards receiving on 79 catches, 7 touchdowns. Pretty good rookie season. But then you have stuff like this happen. And this is where players got to be careful, man. Yes, you have a lot of money. Yay, coming off a Super Bowl. I understand why some players are a little reckless when you know when you're living high like this. But
There's got to be
have
contract
you have
regulations to this, especially with young rookies. They got to force them to go to this mini camp or something like that. Because if they do something stupid like this, it's going to be a breach of contract and they're losing out on millions because he just threw his life away because of this. So hopefully
it very
that
well.
not just young players looking at this, but hopefully agents look at this as well and upper management looks at this and hopefully they realize this is going to be a serious problem very soon. And we can't allow anything like this to happen, especially with one of our guys that we just drafted and we have representing are not just a franchise, but also the state as well. So that's the biggest thing with that. So hopefully they'll do something in restructuring contracts to give them rules or something like that. Because with Patrick Mahomes' $500 million contract, he can't do anything but just go to the house and go play video games and appear in commercials. That's it. He can't go on
All he
vacation,
needs to
can't
do.
do anything like that.
And ultimately, that's really all he needs to do.
Yes.
You know. Um,
It's a freaking $500
but
million quarterback. What else is he going to do?
I don't really know what the league is gonna do with this. Obviously I know they're looking into this and all that, but man, Rashee Rice, I mean, he a great player, a great young player like this who's got the whole world literally in his hands. Um, he has his whole career ahead of him. And when stuff like this happens, you just it's just it's it's really like you said, it's sad, man. It really is, you know. But hopefully, Coach Reese said that he still wants him in for mini camp and all the team activities. So, hopefully that stays the same. But man, you really never know. So we'll just have to see what happens on how the league handles this this incident.
Got some free agency news coming in. Devontae Smith just got himself a contract extension, $75 million. You know that this team is going to have to lock in. Okay. You got a guy that has had over 2,000 yards receiving and 14 scores the past 2 seasons. Also, the contract guarantees him $51 million, securing Smith through the 2028 season. Now you got Devontae staying in. You get the addition of Saquon Barkley. You get A.J. Brown as well. So here's some numbers that you need to consider. The combined value of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown's contracts is $175 million. They're the Eagles are the only team currently with 2 receivers ranked in the top 10 in total value and average annual salary per Sportstrack. This is according to ESPN's Tim McManus over there. But both have deals averaging over $25 million a year, putting them only behind Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and Cooper Kupp. The only team with 2 wide receivers in 24 making at least $20 million in cash value is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So another move that's going to happen is that the cap number for next year is going to be 26.5 with A.J. Brown. It's manageable with the cap space that you could possibly bring in. You still have $12.2 million this year, and it shouldn't escalate any point now. And also you have Jalen Hurts as well. But with A.J. Brown, his cap number is going to double next year. But Devontae Smith has a 5th-year option in 25. He could make around $16 million. He could hit the free agency market and get out of there. Regardless to say, that's a lot of numbers that we got to consider. This is a team that's going to continue to be a Super Bowl contender, and you proved it this past offseason. When you secure Devontae Smith for a while, you get a guy like Saquon Barkley. When he's healthy, is the best running back in all of football. He's a smaller version of Marshall Faulk to me. And that's a lot considering what Saquon Barkley has done so far in his NFL career. Am I excited to watch him play? Absolutely. I am probably the most hype I've been watching this dude play football than I have been in a while. When you get him in the backfield with Jalen Hurts, watch the option. That option game is going to be ridiculous. You think that you saw something when you had Michael Vick and Warwick Dunn in the backfield or anybody else like that, you better watch the Eagles this year because this is going to be a fun Eagles team to watch.
They are. But you also, you know what this tells you? This tells you the move the Eagles have made this offseason, getting Saquon Barkley, paying Devontae Smith. The Eagles are all in. They're all in. And they should. I mean, they were in the Super Bowl in 22. Obviously, you lose a thriller to Kansas City. Then this past season you go 10-1, and then all of a sudden you hit rock bottom. Losing 5 of your last 6 to close out the regular season, and then you go to the playoffs and you stunk it up. Obviously Jalen Hurts had a dislocated finger in his throwing hand, I believe. But they're showing you that they ain't going nowhere despite what happened this past season, and they're all in, which means this is make or break for Philadelphia, in my opinion. And really, there's no excuse. When you see teams make moves like this, especially contenders who make moves like this, that means Super Bowl or bust. And this team is going to be fun to watch. Obviously, like you said, they were fun to watch last year. They were fun to watch 2 years ago. Obviously we don't see that change. Obviously, they'll have to find a new center. Jason Kelce won't be there this year coming up. Unless something crazy happens, he just decides to come back. I believe Fletcher Cox also retired too. Um, but this is probably one of the best, if not the best, offense in the NFL on paper, and they just have to go out and show it, and I think they will. But there's no excuse of them not making it to the NFC Championship game this year. This year coming up, you know, because obviously, they are in a competitive division. We all know the NFC East is going to come down to Philly and Dallas. And then obviously the NFC crown is going to come down to teams like Philly, San Francisco, Detroit, Green Bay, Tampa probably be back. Atlanta made some good moves in the offseason as well. So the NFC looks pretty stacked, but I think Philadelphia on paper is the best team. Maybe 1A, 1B, San Francisco, Philadelphia on paper, the best two teams in the NFC. So there's no reason for them not to make the NFC Championship this year. So I'm putting the pressure on Philadelphia. It's going to be a great year for them. Should be a great year for them. They should be in the playoffs, and they should win the NFC East. Now you just got to go out there and do it, and we'll see. But I think they can do it. I think they can do it.
We shall see. I know last year's struggle was unbelievable. I think that was one of the biggest collapses I have seen from one team, especially when you looked at last year and how they performed. You saw how close they got. They're 10-1 and they're contending for the number one seed in the NFC and they blow it. What did they do? Lose like 6 out of the last 7 games of the season and end up getting bounced by Tampa Bay in the wild card. I mean, you can't accept that if you're a Philly fan. You're a team that was seconds from a Super Bowl last year or 2 years ago. And there's so many things that needs to get fixed. You have a lot of aging veterans that are gone now. Like you mentioned already, no Jason Kelce, no Fletcher Cox. But this is still going to be one of the best offensive lines in all of football with Lane Johnson and company. Now it's up to Lane Johnson to be the new leader. I'm telling you right now, he's got it. He's learned from Jason Kelce. Now you got to find a new center to benefit you. And I'm telling you right now, there's still some good offensive linemen in this draft. This is a very deep offensive line class. You might want to get some more defensive linemen. Byron Murphy could slip into the 20s, dude. I'm telling you. Probably could. Philly might have a shot at him.
They gonna pick up some more Bulldogs for sure.
They really do. I don't think 2 is enough. You need more than that, dude. I'm telling you, because this is a dominant team. I mean, you're talking about when you get who do they have right now? Jordan.
You got Nakobe Dean, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Kelly Ringo. That's all I can name at this point. That comes to my head. But they got a stacked defense though.
This defense has every opportunity to be the best in all of football. But they also need some DBs, bruh. I think they can probably get Nate Wiggins in the later rounds. But if not, you can look at Cooper DeJean, who I think is arguably the most least talked about player in all of football. I think that any other year, this dude's a first-round pick. But since there's so much depth on the offensive side of the ball, there's no real chance for him to be a potential top 10 pick, even though he should be. But I think that Philly could get a guy like DeJean, and I think that DeJean could be a lockdown corner for years to come. Or at the same time, they can also move him around and have him bulk up a bit, gain around 20 pounds or so, and play some outside backer, some safety maybe as well. So you never know what's going to happen with a guy like Bijan. He's also got he's not just the best defensive back in all of the Big Ten. He's also the best returner in all of the Big Ten. I think he was a first team all Big Ten on both too as well as a punt
Corner
returner and a DB.
and like you said, we'll see. And they have some big
Let me
time.
tell you something that's rare now, Miles. And this isn't a race thing, it's just a thing. You don't see very many white cornerbacks in the league.
Hey, I knew it was gonna come.
But it's
Jason
the truth,
Sehorn.
though, man. When was the
Jason
last time you
Sehorn.
saw a white cornerback?
Jason Sehorn for the Giants.
I'm telling you, this dude might be better than him, bro. Sehorn was all right, but he was playing in an era where, I mean, the game was just evolving and evolving, and there was like no chance for them to stop it. When you played the Vikings or the Rams and all this other stuff with these elite receivers like Randy Moss, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, and the crew like that, it's kind of hard to stop. And if you remember, the last play that Jason Sehorn played got beat on a slant pattern. On guess who? Steve Smith. Double overtime, 0-3. Panthers go to the NFC title game that year, and they end up going to play Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Probably should have went to overtime, too.
That was a thriller. That game was a thriller, too. And that's probably one of the most least talked about Super Bowls, too. Because that was a classic. That was a class. I feel like if Carolina would have won that game, it probably would be talked about more because I believe Carolina, that was their eighth, ninth season in the NFL. Remember, they were established in 95, 96. So
and we're 1-15 2 years ago.
But then again, we were in the Brady Belichick era, and they were just one of many teams who failed to reach a Super Bowl due to the fact they had to run into Brady and Belichick. But, seeing a guy like Cooper DeJean, I watched him a little bit at Iowa on at DB. I didn't really see him he's not really a guy that's going to like wow you, but his work ethic and his effort just separates him from every other corner. He's not the
Was
fastest
that
corner.
him that had the chase down tackle against Michigan?
This year?
Yes.
Because
I remember it was either 3 or 4 that made the chase down.
You talking about in the Big Ten championship game?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, I think that was him. So, and ultimately, those are the type of guys that you want on your team. Obviously, you want the talent, you want the star power, but effort separates all of that. And whoever picks him up is going to be ecstatic, and that's a big time steal for any team.
Oh, without question in my mind. And we'll talk more about the NFL draft next week as we'll have our draft preview special. A lot to break down, especially at the quarterback position. We got arguably 3 of the best quarterbacks to me. We'll have our differences in there. And but real fast though, we'll do a little sneak preview of what we'll talk about next week. Let's talk about JJ McCarthy, dude. How in the world did he go to just being a top 10 pick where people are talking about, man, the Vikings might trade him up for him, or they might do this and might do that. So you're willing to pick a guy that did nothing this year over. I get he's a winner. I get it. He's good. I know he's good with extending plays. He does good against press man. I get all that, but what else does he bring to the table? I get he's a winner and all that, but he just doesn't have that it factor to him. That's my problem. I would rather pick a guy like Spencer Rattler or Bo Nix or Michael Penix over him. I'm not gonna lie. I really would. Because McCarthy is a system quarterback. Well, so was Bo Nix. Okay. Everybody hates Bo Nix, doesn't want Bo Nix because it's Oregon's offense. It's the same offense that Marcus Mariota ran, but it's also the same offense that Justin Herbert ran. He's having some success. So why not take an opportunity against him? It wouldn't hurt. I mean, I'd rather pick Bo Nix over JJ McCarthy any day of the week. I'm sorry, it's just me being honest. I'd rather pick Joe Milton over JJ McCarthy. I mean, I know that's crazy to say in the least, but I just do not like JJ McCarthy. I don't like what he brings to the table. He makes bad decisions most of the time. Yeah, press man, that's great. What does he do whenever it's cover 2 zone? What does he do when there's 3 DBs back deep? What does he do when a rover linebacker is going to come out and take out his third option when he goes for the tight end? We saw him panic a lot during those times too. That's why Michigan was running the ball every single time in the second half against Penn State, because Penn State took away the pass game for him.
Here's my thing about JJ McCarthy. First of all, obviously, you could tell the Vikings are desperate to get a quarterback if they're trying to trade to get a quarterback early instead of waiting at number 12, which I don't think there's going to be a quarterback past New England getting drafted until either Denver or Minnesota. So, but then again, obviously, this is where we go back to, experts looking at potential. When you look at JJ McCarthy on paper, not stats, let's not look at stats or uh production on the field. Let's just look at him as a prospect. He's pretty athletic for a quarterback. You talked about him extending plays. Um, we've seen him run. We've seen him um, when the game is tight, he's gonna deliver. But he does have perfect size for a quarterback. Um, and I already talked about his athleticism. So when you look at that, you can see why JJ McCarthy is ranked higher than guys like Bo Nix, and guys like Michael Penix Jr., Joe Milton, as you mentioned. But like I said, I don't think JJ McCarthy is a top 10 pick, but I do think he's a first round pick. And regardless, listen, like think about, as a prospect, not production on the field, you can see why experts label him as a first round pick. Now, production on the field, as you mentioned, he can extend plays, he's good press man, but you're right. He didn't do a whole lot in Michigan. He didn't do a whole lot, and it's because of the run game. They had the best O-line in football and in college football. I believe if it wasn't them, I believe it was Washington. Um, obviously they had the best run game in football for sure with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum. So if you really think about it, he since the run game was so dominant, he didn't really have to do much. You know what I'm saying? So now you're putting him in a situation where, okay, now he has to prove himself. Now he has to show everyone that, he deserves to be a first round pick. He deserves to, be in a system where he can, do his thing. And ultimately, I'm rooting for JJ McCarthy. I think, regardless of where he gets drafted, we all, I think he's going to thrive wherever he goes, especially a team like Minnesota, who has a pretty good receiving core already. They have a guy like Jordan Addison, who had an outstanding rookie season. TJ Hawkinson, when healthy, is undoubtedly one of the best tight ends in the game. Justin Jefferson, when healthy, is the best receiver in football. Um, so when you look at it that way, if he goes to Minnesota, I think he can thrive in that offense. So, it's just again, it's just another one of those moments where we just have to see where this goes. Hey, you don't think JJ is a first round pick? Your opinion. I respect your opinion because I see why you think that way. But you know, me like obviously we talk about the run game. Now he has an opportunity to show himself that he didn't get to show a whole lot at Michigan. So if he goes to Minnesota, I think he will thrive. But then again, he could be a bust. So we'll just have to see. We'll see where he lands in draft day, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, we ain't gonna be like the Coach JB show and have a freaking blow up like he did with Matt McChesney over
Hey,
Colorado, dog. Oh my God. That was crazy. But anyway, man, I mean, let's just get away from the quarterback situation now. Let me tell you the most underrated receiver that nobody's talking about right now, and that's Keon Coleman. This dude is a stud as a receiver. He's going to fall in the second round, sadly. He should be a first round receiver, but any other year, when you don't have a guy like A.D. Mitchell, when you don't have Brian Thomas, when you don't have Marvin Harrison, and when you don't have Malik Neighbors, Keon Coleman's a first round pick, no question in my mind. The problem is there's not a lot of teams that are looking for a receiver. I can tell you this: Harrison's going in the first round. I think Adunze might go in the first round. We'll have to see. He might fall though. Malik Neighbors is going first. Brian Thomas is a wild card. He may fall to the second round, but he might be a late first. And then obviously A.D. Mitchell is also a wild card as well. So where does that put Keon Coleman? Well, sadly, he's going to go to the second round. It's a guarantee. He's going to have to wait till day 2 to the draft. But any day of the week, this dude is a top 10 pick. I'm telling you right now. When you look at how this dude plays, ball location, unbelievable. When you look at how he performs, when you look at his overall height and depth and the way that he performs at a high level, he gets overlooked by guys that are in the SEC like Xavier Legette and obviously Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. 6'3", 213 pounds. Yes, he ran a 6'4", 6'1". It's a big concern. Let me tell you what, though. Speed really matter at the end of the day? Not really. You look at guys that didn't have the best 40s. So when you look at Keon Coleman, he's a Louisiana guy, so he's around our territory. His stats don't impress you. 50 catches for 658 and 11 scores. This guy is still a big-time guy. First team All-SEC, All-ACC as a receiver, all-purpose, and a specialist. The only college football player to have ever done that is Will Shipley when he did it in 2022. So this guy is an unbelievable athlete. He can play at any position. I think that he can also do anything possible. Forget what he does in the combine. The combine numbers, honestly, are kind of BS because Tom Brady ran like a 5'4", and he goes on to become one of the greatest players of our generation, arguably the GOAT of all of the NFL. But regardless, he's got a quick 10-yard burst. When you look at him first off the line of scrimmage, he's smooth. He has the ability to come down with contested catches, can break tackles after catch. When you get him in the red zone, it's a matchup nightmare for anybody. This is a bold limb, but the way that I saw him whenever he was in the red zone reminded me a lot of Randy Moss. It reminded me of how much depth and how scary he was for any defensive back to go up against him, especially in goal to go situations. Just throw a fade to the end zone and let him come down with it. They had a freaking play call for Randy Moss called Randy Go Get It. I'm telling you, Keon Coleman's going to have the same thing come his way when he gets to his respective franchise this offseason.
Here's what I'm gonna say about Keon Coleman, though. We like to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Roma Dunze. But there's a reason why we talk about those type of receivers. It's because they're flashy. Marvin Harrison is a great route runner. Malik Neighbors can beat you with his speed on fade balls. Roma Dunze can pretty much do it all from what I watched. But Keon Coleman is probably one of the most physical receivers in the game, in the draft. And it's because of what you said. It's his production in the red zone on fade balls. And I saw when they played obviously when they played LSU, that was his best game, 9 for 122, 3 touchdowns against arguably one of the worst defenses I've ever seen um at LSU. But he took over that game against Clemson. They went to overtime against Clemson, and guess what happened? They got the ball, fade ball to Keon Coleman. Go get it. He went and got it. They take the lead, and then they get the stop on defense to win the game in Clemson. I believe that was their first time beating Clemson since 2014. Their first win on the road against Clemson in 2013, which is when they won the Natty with James Winston and company. But this is a big time. This is another big time steal. There's so many steals in this draft, and it's because of the depth. And I think Keon Coleman is a first round pick in any other draft. Um, if a team, if I'm the Steelers, I'm getting this guy. I'm getting this guy. I think he's the perfect fit for Pittsburgh because you got a guy who could play alongside George Pickens, obviously letting Deontay Johnson go. Getting a quarterback like Russell Wilson, you have a veteran voice in that offense who can help guide a guy like Keon Coleman. And then ultimately you got a veteran voice in Mike Tomlin who can help you, who's going to help guide Keon Coleman. I can definitely see Pittsburgh getting Keon Coleman in the draft. Obviously, we'll see. Um, who knows? Who knows what could happen in the draft? We've seen it before. We've seen guys who were supposed to be second round picks get drafted in the first. And then obviously we've seen vice versa. I mean, Will Levis, who was supposed to be a first round pick last year, falls to the second round. So, I could definitely see him shine in Pittsburgh, but he is no doubt one of the more physical receivers in the league in the draft. And it's all about what you said about, his production. And the red zone. He is a red zone threat. You have I believe George Pickens can be a red zone threat as well. And, when you have young players like this playing with a veteran quarterback, playing with a coach who understands his players, I can definitely see him going there. I hope he goes to Pittsburgh too. So, we'll see how the draft goes, but Keon Coleman should be talked about more for sure.
Let's stay on the football topic and let's shift on over to the UFL. Let's talk some action from there. I was actually in Birmingham for the Stallions taking on the Memphis Showboats. That game was unbelievable, dude. That was a blowout from the first snap. I thought we were in for a tight one after the first half, but sadly mistaken. Birmingham sacks Case Cook as last year's. I think he could have been runner-up for USFL MVP. Sacked him 8 times. 8. Three of 3 of which came on the first 2 drives.
Yep.
And I watched Adrian Martinez make his first start of the year. Honestly, I think Birmingham could have put up 50 on the Showboats. But if they don't have 7 penalties and they make at least one 2-point conversion, they're in a good position. But regardless, Birmingham moves to 3-0 on the season. Let's just be honest, dude. This is going to be another contender. This is going to be the UFL champion right here. And they proved it going up against the Showboats. This is a Showboats team that their left side of the offensive line just got manhandled the entire time. Deion Kane, last year's USFL Championship MVP, 7 catches, 144 yards. Jay Sternberger, the former Texas A&M tight end, you remember him very much so from being the big factor in the 7 overtime game. I still think he fumbled. 4 catches, 73 yards, and a score to go alongside it. Just overall, this was just a blowout from the first. Once we got into the second half and Memphis and Birmingham just pulls away with it. Let's just be honest. They're the best team in the UFL. There's no question about it. And I think Adrian Martinez is going to be a star in the making for this Birmingham Stallions offense.
Not to mention, they also play 2 quarterbacks. Remember, it's Adrian Martinez and Matt Corral. I don't think Matt Corral played that much in the game against the Showboats, but he has gotten a lot of
He didn't
playing
play
time.
at all.
Yeah, about to say he didn't play at all, but he has shown out when he's on the field as well.
But the problem is this, dude. You can't get off to slow starts like he did in the first week and also in the second week because he got benched after the first game of the season. But if it isn't for Adrian Martinez getting hurt, he probably doesn't start the rest of the year because last year struggled against a Michigan defense that was bottom line god awful, whose lone presence, whose lone star on the entire field is their kicker, who, by the way, better get him for UFL MVP. I mean, this dude is drawing 55-yard field goals like it's inside of 40 for him. This dude has a freaking leg.
The Birmingham Stallions, like you mentioned, they dominated. I mean, and yeah, you're right. It was a close game, and you know, me watching this game, you know, I thought that we were in for one. We were in for one. Case Cookus, you know, he was favoring his knee a little bit, you know, and really the first 5-6 minutes of the game, as you mentioned, you know, I thought he should have been taken out, but you know, he you know, it's that defensive line is scary. That defensive line and really the team in general, because I believe this was Adrian Martinez's best game of the year. You know, just how in sync he had the offense. You know, they never really looked phased. They never really looked outside of themselves. And when you have a team who can play like this week after week, obviously you mentioned the slow starts they had in the previous weeks before, but you know, if they continue to play like this on both sides of the ball, you may be right. UFL champions, the Birmingham Stallions. But you know, there's also teams that's coming. You know, you got a team who played before them. It was the DC Defenders played Arlington and the in the XFL championship rematch. That game was a thriller. You know, obviously, you know, with the new rules they have with the 4th and 12, instead of doing a kickoff, they kick it back to them. You know, I'm looking at a team like DC. I'm looking at a team like the Battlehawks. You know, they're also coming. But for right now, I think you're right. I think the Birmingham Stallions are undoubtedly the best team going right now. We'll see what happens down the stretch during the season. I believe the championship game is next month, which is also where the playoffs start. So we'll see if the Stallions keep it going. And, like I said, they keep playing like they are right now. I wouldn't see why I should argue with you, Lucas.
Last thought before we wrap it up. The best game of the year. DC down 10 with a minute left in the game. They end up going up, get a touchdown with less than a minute to go. They end up getting two. It's 28-26. I love the new rule. I love the 4th and 12 rule because it's a much better opportunity, a much better chance to have another opportunity to get the ball back instead of having to luck out for an onside kick. They get 4th and 12. The drive continues. DC drives all the way down the field. They get a 49-yarder, win the ball game. And that beer snake was crazy, dude. But overall, what a drive that George Tiamu put up the last two drives of the game. And he balled out. He was struggling up to that point. He only had 11 completions that entire game. But his legs was the reason why the defenders had a lot of success. 9 carries for 53 yards. You can't ask for anything more than that. That was such a good game. That's a game that you love to see. Despite the low attendance and despite the TV ratings, it's okay. At the end of the day, a win is a win. Your defense might have given up over 400 yards of total offense, but at the same time, Arlington really should have won this game because a Bob Stoops-led team doesn't have 9 penalties for 75 yards, and outduel them in third down conversions. 13 of 18, but you're 0 for 2 on 4th down. So I do believe DC won this game, but at the same time, Arlington really had this one in the bag, but they just blew it at the end.
This is what makes the UFL so exciting, man. Like these type of finishes, you know, like you mentioned, down 10, Jordan Chiamu struggling, but people forget, you know, the Defenders were the best team in the XFL last year. They lost the XFL championship to Arlington, who a lot of people didn't really see Arlington as a playoff team. They really only made it because of their division. But hey, they went in the playoffs and they won the UFL. They won the XFL championship despite being 2 games under 500. So the Defenders really had a lot to, in their eyes, they had a lot to prove to a lot of people. They're saying, they're 1-1. Obviously, I believe they were undefeated last year in the XFL. So now you have the 1 loss. You're down 10, looking to be 1-2, and now everyone's looking at you saying, "Oh well, yeah." Now we see the Defenders aren't really who we thought they were. But guess what? You thought wrong because Jordan Siamu showed up when it mattered most, got his team down for a touchdown, get the 2-point conversion, convert on 4th and 12, in range for a field goal to win the game. This is what makes the UFL so exciting. And, I think we're going to see more games like this. I think we're going to see more games like this. And it's because, when you watch the UFL, you can tell every single player just wants to go out there and compete. You got guys like Destroying playing in the XFL, who I believe who had a neck injury trying to make a tackle. Prayers up to my guy Destroying.
I'm sorry,
But
bro. He's done. Just stick to YouTube at this point.
that just goes to show you, man, everyone wants to compete. Everyone wants to compete, and that's what makes the game so exciting. So, you know, if you're just watching the UFL or if you're trying to tune into UFL, they come on, I believe, every Saturday and Sunday. You got to watch it, man. You got to watch it. I mean, these are some good games, and it doesn't really matter what the record is. It's just the players just compete. They compete until it's 4th quarter, 0-0-0 left on the clock. And I am excited to, you know, watch more UFL games, and to see what goes on down the stretch as the season goes on.
Big news coming up for us. We just recently decided we're either going to do one of two things coming up in June with the UFL championships. We're either going to make an appearance in St. Louis for the games, or we'll be going on Instagram Live and doing a whole play-by-play breakdown of every single play. That's a big news coming up. So set your calendars. June 6th, 14th, I believe, UFL championships will be going on IG Live, and we're going to be giving you the latest breakdown and analysis of the UFL title game. Miles, set your calendar tomorrow morning. The spring transfer portal is opening back up. Oh, Lordy. We're about to see On3 give out reports like you wouldn't believe. Speaking of which, speaking of On3, I have an issue with them. I don't think the portal is the problem. It's On3 that's the problem. On3 has been pushing NIL value for the last 2 or 3 years since the portal opened up. So when you have that, a lot of ego starts to build up. And with their new app, they call, what was it, On3 Elite or something like that. I don't remember what the app was called, but it's something brand new that I just saw. But anyway, this is huge. This is unbelievable what we're looking at right now, because you don't see this a lot. We're looking at it's called On3 Elite. It's the social network for athletes. So what they do is that you get a subscription through it. It's through On3 Elite. High school recruits and college athletes now have access to complimentary On3 Elite subscriptions. So when you join the On3 Elite Athletes social networking app, you get an opportunity to adjust your NIL value. You get an opportunity to do a lot of that. But here's the problem. What's the point? How would you know your worth? Why do you think that you get to decide what's your worth? See, this is the problem in amateur athletics today, is that we're letting, I wouldn't say the inmates run the asylum, but let's just be honest. We're letting 17 and 22-year-olds control how much they make. I'm all for athletes getting paid. That's fine. I don't care. That's all good and all that they're getting paid. They deserve to get paid. We've been wanting that to happen for the last, 10, 15 years that we've been around? But it's getting out of control. We're getting 17-year-olds 7-figure contracts and they haven't even stepped on the field. That's what Dylan Raiola is going to deal with. That's what happened with him. That's why he flipped from Georgia to Nebraska. But now he's got this thing, and it's going to be a lot of the weight of Nebraska fans everywhere that's going to be on him. You know what they basically just told him, Miles? They told him, hey, here's a contract for you. Here's a lot of money. All right. Come to our school. Come to Nebraska. Come be a Cornhusker. Oh, by the way, though, we haven't won a national title in 25 plus years. We haven't been a consistent contender in the Big Ten for a while. We haven't done anything so far since we left the Big 12. You got a fan base that's expecting you to be a national championship contender in a few years. Good luck. You're the best recruit that we've arguably had in 10, 15 years. Here you go. We're just putting more pressure on these kids, dude. And I mean, it's sad to see, but why do you go to high school for a guy like that? Go to the portal. I mean, I get Jeff Sims was a bad pick for you, but there's still so many guys that you could pay. But you give all the pressure to a 17-year-old kid, which is unbelievable to me. So, to me, arguably, On3 is the problem. not really, because they're giving the athlete a lot of freedom to choose how much money they're worth. And I think that's what's kind of affecting college football and rocking it to its core. What you thinking, bro?
I don't know how many times I got to say this, man. I told you the players are not looking for what's the right fit for them. They're looking for the money. And make a great point. On3 Elite has been a big problem. I'm just not hearing about this.
And when
Like,
did On3 Elite come through? When the portal decided to evolve and when NIL decided to get involved in amateur athletics. So what does that tell you?
exactly what I've been saying, man. I mean, I don't understand. Like, okay, I get it. You're trying to acknowledge players because they put in the work, they put in the hours, and they should get something. They should get some worth for what they do. I understand that. They do, but now you're giving these people freedom to literally destroy their college career before it even starts,
And you know what's
and that's a
worse?
problem.
The 80 team league, super league that they're proposing is going to be even worse for the athlete. I'm telling you, it's going to be bad. This 80 team league that they're proposing, I don't understand what's the point of it, because essentially it's like you're getting rid of everybody. There goes the group of five guys like Boise State, like Fresno State, like the Mountain West and the WAC and all these different conferences that will have a contender. But now it's just like the group of five is essentially from the American, which is always going to have a New Year's Six participant. You're not going to see teams from the Mountain West Conference or from somewhere in wherever Tulsa is in, where they used to be, or from the
Oklahoma.
Sun Belt or other conferences like that. It's like they get kind of shoved to the side. And they say that if depending on the performance, they'll elevate them every 2 or 3 years, which doesn't make sense. So if you're an athlete, you better be against this because there's no way that this is getting off the ground. The only conference that's supporting this is the ACC. You know why? Because of what happened last year. So let's just pretend Florida State makes the playoff. This is what happens. We don't have this thing of a super league. The ACC doesn't complain about how their conference deserves to be a contender for a CFP over 1 year when they've had Clemson in the CFP for 5 straight years. Explain to me how this crap makes sense.
It doesn't. That's the point. It doesn't. And I told you this was going to get worse. I told you the NIL situation was going to get worse. And it's just giving players too much freedom. It really is. I don't understand how you can look at a player who hasn't really played much. Either he hasn't played much college ball or he hasn't played college ball at all. You're giving him freedom to tell you how much he's worth. That makes no sense because what tends to happen when that player's at that school and it doesn't go the way he wants, it doesn't go the way the program wants, and then all of a sudden, he's not getting the playing time he wants. What tends to happen? He's back in the portal doing the same thing. And then he goes to that team, and the same thing happens. What happens? He goes back to the portal. So now it's like free agency at this point. And
JT Daniels is a good example of it.
JT Daniels, you could say Spencer Sanders, DJ,
Uyunglele.
yeah, Alongalai, all these players who are team hopping in college. I mean, is it really helping you? Is it really helping you get to your main goal? Because we all know every college athlete's main goal is not getting paid a lot of money in college. You know, their main goal is getting to the professional level. But you're hurting yourself getting there doing this. And man, I don't see any improvements with this. So guess what? I see this getting even worse than this. And I don't know. I think college football is in a nutshell right now with this, and I don't think they're getting out. Um, but we'll see how this On3 Elite thing goes. I know it's new, so they'll probably make some changes with this, hopefully some good changes. But right now, I'm with you, man. This ain't a good look.
It hasn't been a good look for the last 3 years, brother. We'll see what happens with On3 as the next several months, years go on, as NIL continues to grow, as amateur athletics slowly kind of dies off a little bit, and this now starts becoming basically like a semi-pro football team now, or a semi-pro football league. So we will see what happens from then on. Once again, that's going to do it for our episode today. Thank you, Miles, as well. Successful video podcast. Next week, we got draft week. It's our draft week special. We'll have a couple of NFL draft analysts come by. We'll have Mike Mitchell, UFL insider over at Sports Illustrated, come talk about some more NFL, more UFL action. We'll also have none other than Reed Johnson, host of the Markcast, come by, talk some UFL. Miles, it's been a pleasure, brother. For all of us here at Fourth and Forever, thank you guys for listening. Can't wait to see you next week. And this has been another episode of Fourth and Forever.